I've been working on these berries for this slow berry branch, and some of you have asked me how I've been making these berries, and the branches too, but right now I'm not doing the branches, so maybe I will do a second live where I show you how I make these branches. They're surprisingly easy, and the berries are super easy to make as well. Hi Linda, hi Emily. So anyways, because I was doing this, I thought, okay, I'll just hop on the live and show you quickly how I make these little berries for my branches. So I usually use the cheapest gauge I have for the berry branches, or the berry stems, I would say, because they're not that important how they hold up. Usually they're glued together fairly tightly, and so from my perspective it doesn't really matter what the quality of the stems are. This here I think is a 24, so it's a little bit 24 or 22, so it's a little bit thicker, cloth wrapped. I do like it cloth wrapped, and I find that it goes into the berries a lot smoother. So this here is what we're looking at in terms of the end result. Put this here. So this is what I use. It is Crayola Model Magic clay. And I've used polymer clay before. So polymer clay is the stuff that comes in this little small square packet, and it's nice and hard. You can put it into the, generally you would put it into a toaster to heat up, and that dries it out. You could also air dry some of the polymer clay as well, but you do have to wait a little bit of time, so it does take a little bit of time. This stuff here, the Crayola Model Magic, is for children. It's children modeling clay. And what I do like about it is that it's really clean, so nothing comes on my hand. Polymer clay, on the other hand, it does leave some residue. So I have white here, and this comes in a pack of 4, I believe. And I bought 4 because it was it seemed more economical for me to buy 4 when I was making a large arrangement. But they do come in different colors. So I've used a green, a really it's kind of like a moss green for some of my succulents, and that worked out really well, but I think they disconnected it, so discontinued it, sorry. So I ended up having white, and I just made my own colors with food coloring. But in this case, I don't need to do that, not right now. I actually like having the white underneath to create my blueberries. So I've got my gauge, and all I do is I roll it into a ball, but I don't roll it into like a ball because when you actually stick this in, it does squish. So I kind of make a lopsided ball, and then I just push it in. And then you get something like this. And then if you want, you can reshape it a little bit. Just like that. Roll it around. Something like that. And then I have... This was from an old arrangement that I had, and I had foam inside, glued inside. It's just floral foam, and then I use it to hold all my berries. But I mean, if you have styrofoam either from packaging or styrofoam from takeout, like takeout boxes, you can use that as well. I will use the lid. I'll just like flip it down, and I just poke it in. It doesn't hold as well as this foam, obviously, because it's a lot thinner, but it does work, and it's something that you can use to hold it. Otherwise, maybe you could use like a plate or maybe a cup of rice or beans or something like that. So anyways, I make my little balls, not like exactly like spheres. I make them like this, and then by the time you put them on and you skewer them with your gauge wire, they get to be a little bit more round. If you want to, you can just reshape them so they're even more round. This one's a bit square. Oh well. So with this, I was planning on making tomatoes. So I'm gonna make bigger ones. I've got these cherry tomatoes in my garden, and they're dying now. It's past the season, but I've got tons of them that are still green, and they've been green for weeks because it's not in season anymore. So I was thinking that I would take one of them and remake it. It's a perfect model. So let's see if I can do this. Just gonna put it like this, and then I'm gonna reshape it like that. And then later on, when it dries, then you can put on any of the leaves or the I don't even know what you call it, the tops of the tomatoes. I have to look up that name. Anyway, so any shape, whether it's big or small, will normally dry within probably around 12 hours. I have worked with it before where it's less than 12 hours and it still works, but with round ones I would try not to, just because you change the shape of it. So anyways, that's how you make the little round balls. Painting them. So for the branch, this branch that I'm doing, I'm making more branches. I used white as the base, and what that does is it creates natural highlights in the paint when you paint it. So instead of dyeing it, hi guys, thanks for joining me. So in terms of coloration, instead of actually using blue clay to make these little berries, I'm using white so that I can create different shades of the blue when I paint it. So what I'm using is this guy here. I've got some here that I've done that I need to paint. I've got my paint here. See, I'm halfway through it. So to get something like this where, and this is drying still, you'll see that there's a variation in color. I like that. I don't like it matte. I don't like it to look completely the same blue. So in order to do that, I'm here using a professional grade acrylic paint. And this one is the Thalo blue. It's a lovely, lovely texture to use. I just unscrew it. I just squeeze like a little tube of it onto my palette, and then I use it like that. And the consistency is really, really wonderful. I'll just show you guys. Consistency is nice and thick. See, it doesn't drip or anything like that. And you can see, even when I push it aside, you can see that it's there's some transparency in it. And if you thicken it, you can create the opaqueness that you want in sections of the little berries. So here's my berry, and this, you can just use whatever tray. This one here it's for quail eggs. My son loves quail eggs, so I have a ton of these, but they're perfect for this or alcohol ink. So all I do is I take a brush and I paint it on, and you see how thick it goes on. It's so lovely. And if you want, you can thin it out. You can thin it out with some water, or there are professional grade formulas that you can use. But you see that it's nice and thick. It's uneven, so all I do is I kind of swipe it down so that's a little bit more even. But you see that it creates highlights where it actually naturally does. It's like painting. I don't know if you guys have painted. The principles of painting and principles of light and applying color. You'll see that it's lighter here and it's darker here. And you can actually add a little bit more darkness here, and that's what I do. And that's it. And that's how I make my berries. I wait for it to dry. It dries fairly quickly, and then that's when I work with it. If you want to change up the color of the stem, you can. You just use floral tape or some crepe paper, or if you want, you can even paint it. If you want to apply something else to it, you can as well. But this is how I do it. And the great thing about this acrylic paint is that it has a beautiful sheen to it that cheap acrylic paint does not have. So there's so much control I can get using this acrylic paint. And the blue just It's just so, so vibrant. And in terms of brush, you can use whatever brush, it doesn't matter. You're not doing any, you know, too minute details. You're not painting on anything that has a ton of texture. This is super easy to apply paint to. If you don't have acrylic paint, you can try some other paints. I've painted with gouache paint as well, which is thicker and more opaque. So you could do that. And that works pretty well too. Essentially anything you have on hand. Regular acrylic paint works as well. It just, you might need to either thicken it up, so let it dry and sit on your palette first, let it kind of thicken up before you apply it, or you may have to paint it twice. This stuff here has a lot of coverage, so I don't need to paint it twice. It just naturally flows really well. So you see the white is showing through and it lightens up my blue, right? The other option is using pan pastels or any kind of pastels, and they work beautifully with this clay as well. And I have to say, I mean, I used to use polymer with this, polymer clay, and Quinn suggested using the Crayola magic clay, and since then I've been hooked. The wonderful thing too about this versus the polymer clay is that this is nice and light, so it doesn't add any significant weight to your stem, so you don't have to account for that when you are building your branch or whatever it is you're using this for. There. So that's it. So this is what I'm using right now, and you can get this at any art store or Michael's. You can get it at Michael's as well. This stuff is fantastic. And then and then the Crayola Model Magic Clay, and this one's in white. And they come in different colors. Some of the colors are a little bit tacky, but if they work with what you're making, then you know, who cares? So, hi guys, thanks for joining me. I'm actually ending this live because I finished explaining what I was doing, but I've been making little berries, and I was just showing you the process, including what type of clay I use, the stem wires, and then how I painted the berries. Just using the acrylic paint here, this professional grade, and then using the Model Magic Crayola clay. And like I said, the clay will dry within a couple of hours, but I would wait. In a case like this where it's nice and thick, I would wait for overnight, and then you can paint them. And then they dry within minutes, probably about like 5 to 10 minutes, and then you can work with them.